The picture that you see here is us after the 9th day. After we have done deeper listening, only then did we become like this in Salamanca. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was Frank. He wouldn't mind. It was fine. So, for the rest of the morning, I'd like all of us to go back to the specific group whom we will facilitate the discernment in common for. Because I'd like our capacity to do discernment applied to them already. So, everything that you've learned from Ian and Sally earlier, let's bring that to the group that you will facilitate on or facilitate for. And one thing about facilitating a group is that they don't reach a certain stage where they are immediately authentic with each other. Okay? It does not emerge automatically, and it requires some facilitation, some accompaniment. Okay? And usually the whole process starts with being honest with realities, and then also you will need to be at home with tension. Okay? Uh, there is a process where how can you help everybody learn how to surrender each other's ego through the process? That's a critical part of discernment in common, where surrender is a part of the whole process. This is what happened both in my experience, in almost all of the groups that I have facilitated with, from Emmaus to Cepham to CIS to even the Sacred Heart Retreat House and Novitiate, to the Sacred Heart Parish, to Myanmar, Cambodia, JCAP. It always goes through a process where everybody will have to learn how to surrender. And often, the first ones whose surrender is deeply, deeply felt would be the major superior. I always see that towards the end of the whole process. The capacity to be humble is something that is very, very palpable. For me, that's a sign that the Spirit has been helping everybody all throughout the process. But to get there is something that we have to continually discern. Maybe to help us is to understand, how does a community grow in the first place? So I will rely here on the work of Scott Peck. He has a book back in the 80s called The Different Drum. And coming from that book, we distill how a community is born. And it goes through four steps or four processes. First is the time when everybody is just simply trying to be polite with each other. Okay? We call that the pseudo community. So as much as possible, we avoid conflict, we avoid differences, we avoid trying to rub somebody with the wrong elbow. No? So it's a certain sense where the community still doesn't have that level of depth in themselves, right? Then chaos happens, okay? There are clashes over differences. And usually this is triggered by an impasse. And I'll talk more about how would you know if the community is going through an impasse? We will talk about that. Once you facilitate discernment in common through chaos, there is a need to let go of ego defenses. And this is where the 3 rounds of spiritual conversation is very, very critical. The letting go of the need to win, the letting go of control, the letting go of defending oneself, and letting go of fixing others. Okay, so that process is something that you help and accompany the community to go through. Okay, so it's very, very important that you are at home with tension and confusion. And then eventually it gives birth to a true community where we embrace one another truthfully. And this is where also we need to discern the signs, because this is something that we cannot force to happen in the group or in the community. Okay. So let me talk a little bit more about impasse, because a lot of the things I will give you this morning would be additional tools for the communities that you are helping on. So how do we acknowledge certain impasse? And I'd like you to consider the communities that you have been trying to get to know more yesterday, right? Here are signs of impasse. There's loss of focus, identity, ambiguity, and confusion about the core purpose of the community. Or it can be about emotional disengagement, wounded trust, or grieving of past leadership. It's also possibly be about economic fragility or issues of sustainability, triggering existential questions about survival. So, okay, we don't have budget for the next quarter. How do we make sense of the mission? That can happen. Could be about transition without adequate continuity planning, meaning to say you don't have you don't have successors, okay, leading to mission interruption along the way. It can be about waning energy and engagement from current members and new blood. So a lot in the community are going through burnout. Market and mission context has evolved, but the team has not fully adapted. So here, the community that used to take care of a lot of the people there, a lot of the young people that you have been helping in the community have left and went to other cities, for example. So that's a big change in the community that you are serving. The charism is needed but misunderstood. Relevance is questioned. So sometimes this is what groups go through when their original identity in the community is suddenly losing face also in the environment that they are in. So that can also happen. There is also disproportion between the magnitude of needs and internal capacity. Like, more people are asking help from us, but we have limited capacity to help. And voices are surfacing that point to an invitation for radical reconfiguration. You can hear feedback that, hey, we are not able to hold ourselves together anymore. And it's very important that we change the way we do things. So here are a more how you read impasse. First is, impasse is not failure. Okay? It's a threshold, meaning to say there is an evolution in our call. So yes, we are moving forward, but normally in baby steps. It's not the kind of flow that you used to have anymore. But it's just, you are moving, but it's baby steps. Also, impasse demands a shift from willfulness to willingness. Instead of trying to control everything, there is some level of letting go that has to happen. Then communal impasse requires communal discernment. So we know that we need to reflect, but it's just that we have so much work to do. Okay. So that's something that you have to pay attention to also. But I just would like to assure everybody that hope is born through powerlessness. And oftentimes, this is what is deeply felt during an impasse. People they feel helpless, they feel powerless. That's usually an indicator. However, the community somehow is still trying to do their best and still are trying to be faithful to their mission. That is something that you can check with the members also. And then the new cannot emerge without silence and patience. It will not be an overnight change that can happen. So do not misconstrue that chaos is something that will create destruction of the community. No, perhaps the community is being transformed. These are also indicators that possibly God is taking over instead of us trying to control the mission. So what do we do as facilitators? Our task is to help the community make space for the Spirit. And that's the role of discernment in common. to make space for the Spirit. Okay? So for example, you have facilitated spiritual conversation and you felt like you were not successful because nothing concrete came out of the spiritual conversation. Don't worry, that's not a failure. Something else is being born out of the whole process. Okay. So check on the groups that you will be helping. They might be going through something like this. And perhaps their community is being transformed. So how do we do that? We have to help them go through a process of emptying. Okay? We have to help them go through a process of emptying. So your role here is you are, as a facilitator, you are the community doula. Okay? You are the community doula. So how do you help give birth to this emerging inspiration for the community? First and foremost, do not fear tension. Okay? Especially for those of us in Southeast Asia, oftentimes we love to run away from tension. We have our good way of skirting around it, right? But as a facilitator, if you are tasked as a facilitator, do not be afraid of it. It may indicate deeper truths, desires, fears, and differences that are surfacing for the community. Okay. That's why, as facilitators, our prayer becomes doubled. We pray a lot, we try to listen. And the goal is not immediate agreement, but deeper discernment. So that means to say, it's not our task to look for options for a solution. Perhaps the solution will not come from us. Okay? We are not problem solvers. Our task is to allow what is emerging to come up. And in that manner, we have to ensure that there are proper prayer points, there's enough room for spiritual conversation, and the plenary is in a process where the plenary session is all about trying to listen to each other better. Another thing is, please resist premature harmony in the community. So, we should avoid forcing consensus quickly. And we should avoid silencing difficult voices. They need to be heard. In Cambodia, on my first day, when I was speaking about the situation, I was simply walking through their situation right now, which is a consolidation of the survey that I did as a pre-work. So I'm talking about, okay, these are the things that you are going through as a community. And then there were two voices who are resistant about it. Okay? Very resistant about it. So my task as a facilitator back then was not to go against their defensiveness, because that will make things worse. My task there is to listen. So what you are saying is this and that and that. Because it's important that people who are deeply, deeply worried about the community needs to be listened to. Okay. So one Filipino Jesuit came to me after the first session and asked me, JP, okay ka lang? Are you okay? I'm so sorry that my brothers are like this, etc., etc. I know that was disrespectful, etc., etc. I told this Filipino Jesuit, told him, it's okay. This is part of the process. First and foremost, I have a good handle of myself. Second, I know everybody is going through pains right now. My important task here is to listen to them, although it appears as if they are going against the process. Okay. So, as a facilitator, if I allow my own ego to stand there, I don't think we will ever continue for the second day. But I knew already, and I think that was the guidance of the Spirit. I know that it was not about me in the first place. It's just that hurting people need to be heard during that process. So it's important not to silence difficult voices. It's also important that we do not reduce complexity too early. We have a certain way of, like we feel overwhelmed about the situation at times because it's as if everything is just imploding in the process, right? Everything is just blowing out of proportion already, right? But it's sometimes we have a tendency to simplify things. But let's make sure that we do not jump the gun too early. Okay. So premature peace often keeps the group in pseudo community. So they cannot grow if we try to push for okay, we're all in harmony, let's all pray together. Sometimes we do that prematurely. But listening is important here. So our task is to help the group go through emptiness. Okay? And I think this is the genius of the 3 rounds of the spiritual conversation. Because the 3 rounds of spiritual conversation simply allows us to empty ourselves. Okay? It allows us to empty ourselves of the need to win, or the sticking too much on fixed positions. Sometimes that is an attachment. No, let's go this way. This is the best way to approach it. Defensiveness, hidden agenda, and the urge to control outcomes. So it's very, very important that we prepare everybody to listen through the 3 rounds. So we highly encourage prior to the discernment in common, we have to teach everybody how to properly go through the 3 rounds. So sometimes a workshop on the 3 rounds is also needed before you do discernment in common. Okay? So because this is how we can encourage contemplative listening, interior freedom, humility, truthful speech, and openness to conversion. Only then would we realize and experience the consolation which Ian was describing earlier. Okay. And as we help everybody go through the process of emptying, we discern the signs of true discernment. And often you can find this here. The consolation is about peace, clarity, and energy. Concretely, the kind of peace often that happens is, okay, I don't agree with this other group, but I can make space for them. Okay. I can make space for their voice. So if you are able to check that, outside the formal sessions, you can do one-on-ones, especially among the key people. How do you feel about the process? And what do you think is going on already? Once you are able to get that information from people during break time, you can sense whether they are getting into consolation already. There is unity despite the fact that everybody might come from different perspectives. But in the process of emptying, they can set aside what they prefer and start understanding that the mission is way above themselves already. They are going beyond themselves already. There is clarity of story, especially how the Lord has been dealing with the group. And there is growth in greater freedom. One indicator that you have in growth in freedom would be, instead of just sticking to one solution to the problem, they look at several options. That's a sign of freedom. And the group becomes more creative. When creativeness comes up in the mode of the group, that means to say there is greater freedom that is happening because they can see other perspectives already during that time. There's openness to interruptions, and there's movement towards life and mission. And sometimes the funny thing is, towards the end of the discernment in common, or an apostolic planning for that matter, when everybody has settled on a way forward already, sometime, somehow, after that whole process, a curveball will be thrown to the issue. So a new noise will come out, something will challenge the solution after the plan because they have arrived to a way forward already. And it will all of a sudden create some noise again in the community. But for me, that's a sign that they have done a very good decision process because a different spirit is challenging what they have come up to be the way forward. But what happens there is the community continues to be together even in the difficulty. They're still on consolation for that matter because they know they are not as disturbed as before. So that's one tool that you can have. Another tool that you can have is once the community has decided to go a certain way forward, that would be a good point for you to facilitate a process for prioritizing the next steps forward. Okay, and through my engagements, I was able to combine two perspectives to create like a Magis-based prioritizing activity. And I think I really owe this to Saint Ignatius in terms of his understanding of Magis, including what is stated in the constitutions as well, combining those ideas to become a process for prioritizing. So you have here, for example, you have a spectrum here of there is less impact, but it's common good and it's a general need, or the situation is a good impact or common good, and it's an urgent need, or the usual traditional understanding of Magis where it's the greater impact, more universal good, and more urgent need. But it will be very, very hard to get into Magis if there is no proper understanding of what we have, which would be our talent, our treasure, our time, our togetherness. So when you are helping the group to identify the priority, you can create like a 2x3 for them. Okay? You can use this as a tool. If it's greater impact and more universal good and more urgent need, and you are high on talent, treasure, time, and togetherness, then that's your priority. If it's greater impact, more universal good, and more urgent need, but we lack talent, treasure, time, and togetherness, the priority is to develop our capability first. But you can do a small project which you can somehow test. Do not go full scale. Okay? Just test it according to whatever small talent, treasure, time, and togetherness that you have. Okay? But as you do a pilot, continue to develop your capability. If it's good impact, common good, and urgent need, but you have talent, treasure, time, togetherness, and you have high resources there, then combine this with similar intents and reevaluate if you can raise this as a greater impact. We have good talents, we have enough funds. Can we reevaluate if we can scale this more so that we can have greater impact and move that to a priority? If good impact and common good and urgent need, but less talent, treasure, time, and togetherness, you might want to connect with other groups or congregations to combine efforts for that. And perhaps see if the other congregation might be doing better than us for it, then we might need to connect with them and collaborate with them. If it's less impact, common good, and general need, and you have a lot of talent, treasure, time, and togetherness there, please reassign this somewhere else. Oftentimes, we misconstrue that things that used to be greater impact through time became less impact. But we have allocated so much resources there, and we have not discerned over this. So we need to reassign this. Okay? And if it's less impact, common good, and general need, and there's less talent, treasure, time, and togetherness, let it go. This is how we help prioritize things for our mission. I think Myanmar has done a very good process through this also. You can ask Father Titus to share his stories on Myanmar, on identifying the priority. It's interesting how Myanmar has reimagined their mission, that their priority at this point in time is healing. Okay. Not distribution of goods, not covering for everything, but healing for everybody. That was greater impact for them. And they have so much talent for that. And they can seek help for that. Okay. So that this can be your tool, and you can include some quality criteria to that. By the way, these new slides, you have a copy of that in your folder. Okay. So you can look into your program when you assess your program, so the quality of it. Make sure there is a criteria, and this is a sample that you have. No? Is our current program compassionate? Is it a hopeful encounter? If going through your program is not hopeful anymore, we might need to reimagine the program. Okay. So you can make sure that also, as you prioritize, it allows you to open more space for ongoing discernment. Okay. The beauty about so what came out of Myanmar, because they are not in normal circumstances, we look into 4 possible directions for the country. What happens if we are status quo in the situation in the country? What happens if it gets worse? What happens if it gets a little better? Or for some miracle, it gets way better, okay, and goes looks into a renewed way of doing things. In Myanmar, for each of the situation, they have 3 different priorities for each. That's what came out of this whole process, because they have looked at different situations that can happen for them. So it allowed the community to be adaptable to different situations, because they are not in ordinary times, right? But how would they know if they need to shift? So they have to go through communal discernment loop. What they would do is do discernment every 3 months. They go through this. So after the planning, they will reflect and renew. What are we learning in the situation? Where did we see the Lord in the process? How are we becoming more loving? That's after 3 months after the planning. And then they can check what is happening, what is emerging, what is changing. Where are we being made fruitful in the mission? Where are we being challenged? And then once this is prayed over, they ask, what are we grateful for? Who do we need to take care of? What can be the most compassionate thing to do? And then what do we have? Your resources. What do we prioritize? And then how do we proceed next? So this allows the community to have a continuing discernment for them. So for your respective communities, as Ian said, it might not be one-off. No? You might need to do an examine every few months of what has been prioritized. And you can use this process. This can already be part of your prayer points when you do your mission examine. And after each examine, make sure that whatever came out of it is documented in just one platform. Okay. Often we miss out on documenting when we do discernment, so that you can discern what has been agreed upon again on the next cycle. So these are additional tools that you can use. As facilitators, you can be flexible also. once you get the hang of the whole process, you can be flexible. And what I found in myself as I help through groups is that I am able to meet them where they are. I'm able to pray over, okay, Lord, where are you leading the whole group? And then I set the prayer points based on that as well. Then, after my design, I check with the major superior, do you think this process will make sense with them? Okay. So I seek consultation also, just so I receive feedback. Okay. So these are a few more tools that you can use in the process. Okay. So think through how else you can strengthen your ability to really become like doulas. No? You give birth to what is emerging for the community. So for your prayer and reflection for this morning, we'd like you to recall a situation of discernment in common or a spiritual conversation group. When the Spirit is moving or not moving, how did you facilitate, respond, or hold the group? In what ways were the spirits affecting your interiority also? Because you're not just listening with each person in the group, you're also listening to yourself. This would be your prayer and reflection.